What is going on with quarterback play in the current NFL? What's going on, everybody? Good morning. We have made it to Tuesday. Youth Watch Tuesday will be coming out a little bit later today. I have not forgotten. We will be talking about our young players soon. Before we get there, though, I want to spend the morning talking about an interesting point of data that is being passed around in NFL circles right now. So I saw this from a few different people. I'm highlighting a tweet in particular from Steve Palazzolo of the 33rd team, but I saw it from other places as well. And the trend line being established here, because we're not there yet. It's not a full trend yet, but we're seeing a clear trend being established, is a little bit concerning if you're a fan of great quarterback play in the NFL. And I want to talk about why this might be, and I want to talk about what this might mean. So first, we'll just read out the data as it is presented to us on the surface. The point of this little data set we have on screen from this tweet is from 2019 to 2022, there were a lot of passing touchdowns in week one of those seasons. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. 51 to 61 touchdown passes. 2023, it collapsed all the way down to 37. Now, that could be a fluke. That could be an aberration. And yet, this week, after all the games were played, the trend was reestablished as being a clear downward one in 2024. We had 33 touchdown passes before Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football is over, so we know that it was 35. So that is 2 straight years now where week one NFL passing touchdowns were way down. And I want to talk about this a little bit because I think this is indicative of something more significant. Because week one NFL touchdown passes is arbitrary and on its own completely meaningless. It's one cherry-picked piece of data in a gigantic pool of data that you could be pulling from. But I think there's other breadcrumbs here that lead us to an interesting and maybe concerning conclusion, depending on your perspective. So we're going to talk about that in this video. Before we get into this, though, I hope you like this video. If you do, please click the thumbs up button down below. Helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe if you're new and you want daily Seahawks content. Click the bell for notifications. And consider becoming a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. Would appreciate whatever support you're able to give. So let's think about this. It's not just touchdown passes, right? And I want to stress once again, I would never tell anybody that I was trying to give good advice to use passing touchdowns as some kind of metric to evaluate quarterback play. I would never ask anybody to look at the number of quarterback touchdown passes somebody has and say, that tells me who's the good quarterback and who's the not as good quarterback. So let's look at another stat here. Another stat that I don't necessarily believe is an end-all be-all or anything that is crazy indicative of ability or performance, but one that is nevertheless telling us something, right? They count these stats for some reason. Yards, passing yards. Let's look at passing yards in week one. And this hasn't been updated for last night's game yet, but last night's game didn't really change anything. So here's the point. We had 2 quarterbacks go over 300 yards this week. Tua and Stafford. And Stafford was actually kind of bad because he needed 49 attempts to do it. His yards per attempt were garbage. It was there were only a couple quarterbacks that played the whole game this week that had lower yards per attempt than Stafford. So even that feels like that doesn't even really count, right? So after that, you get down to 14 here. So we're talking about 12 quarterbacks plus Brock Purdy. So 13 quarterbacks that had 200 to 299. So that kind of marker that makes you have about an average day in terms of passing yards, 200 to 299. 13 quarterbacks. That means more than half of the quarterbacks in the league that actually played had less than 200 passing yards. starting with Daniel Jones, going all the way down here through a slight majority of starting quarterbacks who actually played almost the whole game or literally the whole game. You have a long list of guys who didn't even break 200. And that included Derek Carr, by the way, who barely broke 200. And you get down here, you've got a quarterback who played the whole game and didn't even break 100 yards. You have another 4 quarterbacks that didn't break 150 yards, including 2 quarterbacks that won their games, right? Herbert won his game, Caleb won his game, and actually Jacoby Brissett won his game too. Justin Fields won his game. So what's going on here, right? This is trying to tell us something, and I think that there's a couple different ways this could be read, but the bottom line seems to be that right now, quarterback play in the NFL is in a little bit of a valley compared to what we're used to. When I was like a teenager, I remember Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. Eventually, we got Aaron Rodgers. Eventually, we got Ben Roethlisberger. You had Phillip Rivers. He kind of got involved a few years into my teenagehood or whatever you want to say. And it felt like there were, at points, an abundance of elite quarterback play in this league, right? And I would say you could even go back like 10 years, maybe even 8 years, or you could go back like 6 years. And things were going really well for elite quarterbacks. You had a lot of quarterbacks playing at a really high level. And it kind of feels like we're starting to maybe valley just a bit. There could be a little bit of a QB valley right now. I don't know if it's the talent level of these guys, because that would be the easiest explanation, right? You just look at this and you go, oh, the quarterbacks aren't as good. The quarterbacks that were good are gone. Guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees and have retired. Aaron Rodgers has one foot out the door. And we haven't replaced them yet with young, good quarterbacks. But I don't necessarily know if I believe that that is what is going on here. I think there's a little bit more. And I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm looking at the performance that some of these quarterbacks that we think of as being good quarterbacks had. Like, Jordan Love just got $250 million this offseason, and he did not play a very good game at all. Very mediocre numbers. Everyone loves CJ Stroud, and he had a good game, but he didn't blow up or anything. I'm looking at the games that like Dak Prescott had. Now, Dak didn't have to really do anything because it was such a blowout so early, but he didn't even top 180. Joe Burrow couldn't top 170. So I'm thinking about this because these are quarterbacks, by and large, that I know are good, right? I know they're good, but the numbers are not there. And the rule changes haven't really been implemented to favor defense. It's not like the last couple years the league has decided to make it easier for defenses to, stop the pass. The rules are as favorited towards the offense as they have ever been. So why is QB play down? And I think the answer is the way NFL defenses are playing right now is by a pretty wide margin catered towards stopping the big play. And I feel like some quarterbacks are struggling to adjust to that, or it's really, really hard to adjust to that in a way that shows up on the stat sheet, because it was not that long ago when everybody was throwing for 300 yards and many were throwing for 400. I feel like you can go to a random week of football in I'd say the late 2010s, and you would be pretty reliably finding at least a few quarterbacks that threw for 400 and a bunch of quarterbacks throwing for 300. And I think that was because it was so common to have a quarterback pick up like 60 to 80 yards on one play, because the defense would get beat over the top, quarterback would hit their receiver behind the defense, and it'd just be a foot race to the end zone. And when you have those plays even twice a game, and you're just adding like 150 yards to your yardage total on 2 plays, where you didn't really have to do much more than just execute, that's how you get up to that 300 or 400 mark. Modern NFL defenses have really become obsessed with taking that away. That's why Russell Wilson isn't a good quarterback in this league anymore, by and large. There are other reasons too. But Russell Wilson could not adjust to them taking the deep ball away from him. So when the defenses decided, look, we're just going to play, they call it cover two shell. That's what a lot of people call it, the cover two shell. Defenses sit in that constantly. And they're like, look, you can have stuff underneath. We're going to let you have easier completions underneath. But we are not going to let you beat us over the top anymore. We're not going to give you these big, long plays. Most of the time, the big, long plays that we see in the NFL right now tend to be yak-based, where a receiver will catch a short or intermediate pass and then take it a long way because they break tackles or make people miss or what have you. So those are going to be less common. Those don't happen as much as in the old days, the big plays over the top where the defense just gets beat, but where you just get behind the defense. So because of that, the way to win, the way to be successful in the current NFL is to be very patient and to throw underneath. Take short passes, take intermediate passes. Don't get impatient. Patrick Mahomes, who has one of the best arms in NFL history, has kind of transformed into a quarterback who doesn't push the ball down the field that much anymore. He doesn't chuck it up deep. He doesn't try to beat the defense over the top as much. He's more about short passes that set up yak, keep the drive alive, and keep the Chiefs' offense on the field. And I think that these quarterbacks are going to have to really adjust their mentals to get this right. And some quarterbacks are. Like, some of the quarterbacks on this list had great games. Like, Baker Mayfield had an incredible game on Sunday, right? Yeah, he didn't get to 300 yards, but he had a remarkably good game. He had one of the best games of any quarterback this week. Josh Allen had an incredibly good game. He didn't get past 240, but he still played a great game. You find other ways to play great games sometimes. Look at Sam Darnold. He barely tops 200, but he was crazy efficient. Or you have somebody like Anthony Richardson. He only gets to 212 on 9 completions, but he hits 2 monster plays. He was actually one of the quarterbacks that had a lot of success going over the top. So you make up for it a little bit. So there are ways around it, but this is kind of the QB world that we live in right now. These quarterbacks are not bad. They're just being forced to play a style of football that is probably frustrating to them. I think it must be very frustrating to constantly have to throw 10-yard passes, 12-yard passes, and just work your way down the field a chunk at a time, knowing you just can't make any mistakes. Because that's what the big play is, right? It's an opportunity to, in one play, not have to worry about making a mistake on the next play because you already scored, right? Because if you're going down the field, even if it's like 5 yards at a time, that doesn't sound so bad, right? 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. Well, you have one bad play, and it's what do you do then? You're behind the 8 ball, you're behind the sticks. It gets messy, right? You need to be executing at a high level on almost every snap to be able to perform in an offense like that. And a lot of these guys struggle with the patience element of it. They want that big play. They want to get behind the defense. They want to hit the 80-yard score. But the style of football that is being rewarded right now is the ability to just take the simple underneath throws over and over and over again and just grind it down. Baker Mayfield, who may have been the best quarterback in the league this week, had no passes go over 32 yards. And that's with yak, by the way, to be clear. So he never took the top off the defense with a 60-yard throw. Not even close, right? There were some big plays. They do happen occasionally. But realistically, I think that in the current NFL, you just have to accept that you're not going to get the opportunity at hitting that big play all that often. Like, you think about quarterbacks. We talk about arm talent all the time. The benefit of arm talent in the NFL right now seems to me to be less about actually throwing the deep ball, but the ability to threaten the deep ball so the safety is respected and the ability to fit an intermediate pass into a tight window. And the reason why I spent so much time talking about this morning, and this video did go a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I think this is a really important thing to try to wrap our heads around, really important thing to try to understand. We all want to see the return of the big plays to Metcalf where he just runs a 9 route up the sideline and Geno hits him in stride for like an 80-yard touchdown. And I'm not saying they're gone. I'm not saying those plays are dead, but the NFL defenses are doing everything they can to take that kind of stuff away. And the way you combat it is by taking checkdowns, by taking short passes, and by being able to get into those intermediate windows between zones, being able to fit the ball into a tight spot with a defender a step away from his guy. And it's going to be a while before I think things go back to the way they were. Because I think there's enough QB talent in the league right now for guys to be putting up, 6 stats. I think CJ Stroud is a guy who could throw for 5,000 yards in a season, but right now, in the current climate, it might not happen. I mean, this is early. The weather is going to get worse as the season goes on, and it's going to be harder to throw the ball. So the fact that we're seeing these numbers now when the weather is good and we're in September is kind of crazy, and I think is pretty indicative of a trend. So be patient, be understanding, try to accept the fact that the NFL is going through a phase right now, which it very often does. It's a pendulum, right? One side acts and the other side reacts. Right now, the defense has acted to try to take away the big plays over the top, to play that cover 2 shell a lot so that you can't just strike deep. You have to react to it. You have to have a lot of quarterbacks in the league just learn how to play against that defense consistently. Eventually, defenses are going to be forced out of it. So that's what I'm thinking about today when it comes to NFL trends. Let me know what you guys think. I just kind of wanted to make this video to talk about it because I know that Seahawks fans are thinking about big plays. I know that NFL fans in general are wondering where the big plays went. And I think that if you really take a look at it, I think it's pretty clear that with the way defenses are playing right now, it's not going to happen. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think about all this. Let me know if you feel like there's something else going on here. Maybe these quarterbacks are bad. I don't know. Maybe we just have a dearth of quarterback talent in this league right now. Let me know what you think. See you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos coming soon.